Good evening and welcome to Estuary TV. I'm Emma Lingard. Tonight we find out what James Dunn is doing. And joining me in the studio are Kevin Cooper and Dave Maguire to talk about how North East Lincolnshire is tackling loneliness among the elderly. But first it's over to James for the news headlines.
Hello, in the headlines today, a rise in the number of people drug driving and an unexpected rescue mission for one Lincolnshire police officer. There's been a 22% rise in the number of people taking to the wheel while on drugs, according to Humberside Police. Figures obtained by Estuary via the Freedom of Information Act show the number of people taken into custody for driving while unfit through drink or drugs rose from 309 in 2012 to 374 in 2013. A small number of drink drivers unable to be breathalyzed will be included in the statistics, but the vast majority are those on drugs who officers have spotted and deemed unfit but been unable to prove it at the roadside. Drugs were also mentioned in the logs of two crimes in which someone was killed, one in 2012 and another 2013.
I think there has been a rise in drugs misuse whilst driving, yes. I think that is the case. And unfortunately, we've been to several serious and fatal collisions. And toxicology has later revealed that the driver has had illicit substances in the body, which no doubt has contributed towards that particular tragedy.
Chancellor George Osborne set out his budget for the makers, the savers and the doers yesterday. He'll freeze duty on spirits and cider, cut tax on beer by a penny a pint, scrap a fuel duty increase and a rise in the rate of tax on fixed betting machines to 25%. For working people, he announced a further rise in tax-free earnings from $10,000 in April to $10,500 next year, and a slightly higher rate at which people pay the 40% rate. And for businesses, he promised to cut energy bills for manufacturers and raise the investment allowance from $250,000 to £500,000. It was also, he said, a budget for savers, announcing a new ISA allowing people to save up to £15,000 tax-free and radical reforms to remove tax restrictions on how people draw income from their pensions. A brand new school will be open in September to help 14 to 16-year-olds get jobs in the care and engineering sectors. The Academy in Grimsby will open in September and offers specialist vocational training to help students into these emerging sectors. Independent research suggests that in the Humber region, 23,000 openings will become available in care and 15,000 in engineering before 2020. Students will cover 80% of the curriculum studied in school, and a vocational qualification tailored to future employment will account for the other 20%. The courses will be supported by local care and engineering companies.
Yeah, the idea is that it's actually led by local employers, so that, you know, if we want this academy to meet their needs, then you've got to do it in conjunction with them. We thought, particularly for Grimsby and the surrounding areas, it was absolutely vital that we could start at 14 in equipping young people with the skills that they need for the jobs for the future.
2 of the 3 public toilets in Grimsby that were under threat from closure have now been saved, but a third will be demolished. Earlier this month, North East Lincolnshire Council proposed closing the conveniences on Grimsby's Market Hall, Garibaldi Street and Cleethorpes Grant Street to save £94,000. But after significant public outcry, leader Chris Shaw has now announced they will look at other options for the Market Hall and Garibaldi Street facilities. However, the public toilet in Grant Street, Cleethorpes, has been closed as planned and will be demolished. Hull has been granted an extra £95,000 of government funding for businesses affected by flooding from the tidal surge. It's the 9th largest amount awarded out of 65 local authorities allocated money from the second tranche of the £10 million business support scheme. The cash will be used to offer grants towards uninsured losses, including clean-up costs, equipment repairs to premises, materials and stock. So far there has been 30 applications for the grants administered by Hull City Council. More than 200 people have already signed a petition to save youth centres in North East Lincolnshire. The council announced plans to stop running children's centres and gradually move away from providing external services for young people in an attempt to save £920,000. The Save Our Youth Centres petition was launched online the next day and 200 people signed it in the first 48 hours. The issue will be discussed, among others, at North East Lincolnshire Council's full council meeting at 7 p.m. at the Town Hall this evening. Lincolnshire Police were called to a slightly unusual rescue operation yesterday. BC Gary Young gave an ostrich a lift back to the local farm after it was found wandering in Coningsby. That's all from me. I'll see you next time.
The number of people driving while on drugs has risen 22% since last year. The government is currently consulting on legal limits, just as with alcohol, to enable the police to prosecute people. But they already have some relatively effective measures to find out if people's driving is impaired. James Dunn went to Brigg Police Station to meet Casualty Reduction Officer Barry Gardner.
Earlier this month, an inquest revealed that two men, Paul Hodge and David Williams, had been smoking cannabis the day that they were killed, after their car was hit by a train at Greatcoats Level Crossing. A toxicologist said that the level of cannabis in Mr Hodge's system would have had the same impact as being 2 or 3 times above the drink driving limit. And worryingly, drivers taking to the wheel whilst on drugs is on the rise.
I think there has been a rise in drugs misuse whilst driving, yes. I think that is the case. And unfortunately, we've been to several serious and fatal collisions. And toxicology has later revealed that the driver has had illicit substances in the body, which no doubt has contributed towards that particular tragedy.
In 2012, 309 people were taken into custody for driving whilst unfit through drink or drugs. In 2013, it jumped to 378, and police logs show that one person died in both of those years. It can be harder to prosecute than drink driving, although that is about to change.
So currently we have to prove an impairment. It's not an offence to drive with a drug in the system per se. However, the law is changing so that it will be an offence to drive with a drug in the system. There'll be a screening device, and the screening device will, similar to a breath test device, and that will be able to help us to go down the line of proving that offence.
Breathalyzers are a simple way to detect alcohol, but similar equipment for drugs is still in the testing phase. But police officers do know the signs to look for.
Officers are trained to look for the effects of cannabis on the body, and they can be detected, and quite often they are detected. First and foremost, it's looking at a person's eyes. The eyes are a good indication. There's various different things we look at with the eyes, and then we'll carry out various different tests, 4 other tests, and they're what we call divided attention tests.
Now obviously I've not taken any illicit substances, so for me this test was quite simple. But let's see what happens when I put these beer goggles on, which show just how one of your senses can be impacted by the taking of illegal drugs. Walking in a straight line isn't easy when your vision is impaired. I was also asked to close my eyes and count to 30. People who are on depressant drugs, such as cannabis, usually take longer to get there, while those on highs, like cocaine or amphetamine, get there quickly. PC Gardner once stopped a driver who got to 30 in just 10 seconds. But despite this being a fast-growing problem, we can be reassured that the ways to tackle it are catching up quickly.
I'd like to think that we're fairly up on it at present, but as I mentioned previously, it will be a simpler process for us to go down that line of testing for drugs. It's for the safety of everybody. It's the safety of all road users. Nobody wants to be put into danger. Their families put in danger by drug users. Same way as it goes for drink drivers.
We're always being told to keep an eye on our elderly neighbours and offer help, but some elderly people out there remain alone, perhaps not going out or seeing people from day to day, while others remain very active. A new initiative is being launched in North East Lincolnshire to make the area a better place to grow old together. And joining me in the studio are Kevin Cooper and Dave Maguire. Welcome both. First of all then, what causes people to feel lonely?
No company, all by themselves, you know, they don't go out from day to day. The only people they might see is somebody delivering a bill or something.
Presume it's, you know, they've been widowed or they've got no family, local,
Yeah.
maybe choose to be alone.
A lot of people do. Like, we did one survey where one lady said, I feel isolated on a weekend, but I don't like company.
Really? I mean, Kevin, you're sort of like coordinating on this current proposal, aren't you? What is it about the partnership? Because it involves a lot of different organisations, doesn't it?
It does. I mean, the Ageing Better partnership is older people, community organisations, large and small, the council, the health services, police, whole range of other partners, providers, and all coming together because we think this is the right thing to do.
And obviously part of it is bid for lottery money. Now, if you're successful in this, then how is that going to help?
Okay, well, we've been shortlisted for big lottery funding, and we've got one more hurdle to clear next month. If we clear that, we get up to £6 million over the next 6 years.
Okay.
So obviously that sort of money is going to be a big help to the things we want to do. But whether we get that money or not, the partnership's committed that changing the way that we support people who've been bereaved, how we work with people with dementia, providing more social opportunities, more clubs, more places where people can just meet with people who are like-minded.
Right.
Putting all those sorts of activities together is going to happen somehow.
Okay.
Obviously, maybe not in the way it would if we have all of that extra cash coming in.
Right. Okay, now Dave, I know you engage with the community a lot, and we're going to see you in a film next week talking to a group of people about energy and fuel poverty. Just tell us then, what's the reaction been when you've been out engaging with people in the community?
On the isolation, they know people who are isolated, and they'll give us their names and addresses. A lot of them don't want to ask the questions themselves. They'd rather some professional did it.
Okay.
So what we do, we then pass it on to other people to go around and speak to them, and they like to ask them things like, what do you miss doing?
Right.
What can't you do now that you used to do? You know, what are the problems, say, with transport? Can you get out? Things like that, where we can see how we can improve the services. Now, we are a lot of the way there, but we need just that extra little bit of help to find out who are isolated. And once we've got that, we can work on them to find out where we can improve the services.
Okay. I mean, I suppose in this day and age, talking about isolation sounds strange in one way, because we've got obviously the internet as a means of communicating with people, but obviously people out there are still feeling quite vulnerable.
Only 1 in 4 older people locally actually use the internet, have access to the internet. And isolation, loneliness can come in different ways. Some people are housebound, have illnesses. Other people, it's emotional. And you know, if you have a bereavement, actually getting back to dealing with people coming out of your house can be a big step.
Okay.
So you can spend your life on the internet and never actually deal with people and still be very isolated and lonely.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously the money, if you're successful, I know you've said even if you don't get the money, this is still going to continue. Are there particular things that people out there are asking for as part of that consultation?
Yes, there are. Transport's top of the list.
Okay, yeah.
Particularly in the rural areas. Support to get out at night. Things to do on a weekend.
Right.
For people who've been bereaved, just practical help. Maybe to get out the house, maybe to deal with banks and electricity companies, things like that. Doing things that maybe never had to do before.
Yeah.
And for people who are living with dementia and their carers, maybe one-to-one support to help them to stay involved in things in the communities. And then a range of social activities. And people have said there's lots of things like bingo and craft clubs, but they'd maybe just like to be meeting other people with similar interests, to go to the theatre, to go on trips, to have music evenings. So it's a really broad spectrum, and we're still looking for people to come forward with ideas of what they would want to see.
Okay. And so obviously, I mean, that's all we've got time for, but now the consultation period is coming to a close. You're going to discuss this and the bid goes in, and then take it from there, is it? Is it July, the summertime that you might find an answer?
Yes, the submission goes in next month, and there's a big meeting on the 27th of March at the Fishing Heritage Centre if anyone wants to come along.
Thank you, and hopefully we'll catch up on this with you both. Thank you for that. Well, that does bring us to the end of another programme, and as usual, if you have any stories, email news@estuary.tv, contact us via Twitter or Facebook, or pick up the phone and call 01472 315 561. Goodbye.